Welcome, everybody, to the Untold Story podcast. Great to have you with me today, and I'm very happy to have Dr. Drew Pinsky joining me. Obviously, he is a medical doctor, an addiction specialist, but really just such a great observer of American culture, of what makes us healthy, of how we can improve our habits and our relationships in order to be better people, better families, and a better country. So, Dr. Drew, welcome. Great to have you, as always. And we've been doing a number of interviews, actually, around Make America Healthy Again.
Sure,
and
for sure.
I wonder, first of all, your reaction to the election and what you think the message of it is for Americans.
Well, the election, I think we've all understood that the status quo is not acceptable. And for those of us in healthcare who have been asking questions, our lungs could fill with air literally the morning after the election results came in, because suddenly, the day before, if we had asked the following questions: why are we so obese? Why is there so much autism? Why are we so unhealthy? Why is there so much chronic disease? You would be attacked and marginalized for a variety of spurious reasons. And that is insane and disgusting. We have to ask those questions, and we have to solve those issues.
You couldn't be more right. I think that the gates have opened. They were open in a lot of people's minds, like in your mind and in RFK Jr.'s mind, who's going to, if confirmed, will be the head of HHS. You know, I think of Callie and Casey Means and people who have been talking about these issues for a really long time. And I do think that it is hugely hopeful at this moment that we can shake things up in the way we approach, so that we're not constantly operating on people and giving them medicine for chronic diseases when we can have a hope of curing them or preventing some of these
but Martha, how could we have possibly moved forward if we were not even permitted to ask the questions?
Yes.
You talk about listen to the science, which was the cry from on high. That is anathema. That's the opposite of science. Science is about inquiry and questioning and trying to dialectically get to somewhere that approximates the truth. And by just silencing people who have ideas and opinions and questions and are worried about things like how do we give informed consent to our patients. I don't know if you saw Deborah Birx last week on Face the Nation, but she said out loud, she said, we did a bad job of telling people what to expect from the vaccine, what it could and could not do. And I thought, oh my God, that is our primary job, to help our patients achieve a risk-reward analysis that allows them to have informed consent. She's literally admitting there was no informed consent. These are disgusting things. This should never have happened in this country. This is not business as usual. We need to restore ourselves to the proper practice of medicine, where informed consent is the standard, where risk reward is always considered in every medical decision, and a situation where we can ask questions regardless of what it might imply. Just asking why so much autism in this country, you couldn't ask that. You were literally attacked for being non-neuronormative for asking that question. Can you imagine? That is ridiculous. We should be asking any and all questions all the time.
Absolutely. Now, one of the things that there's so much pushback on RFK Jr. for, and since you brought up the vaccine, I'll start there, is that he's anti-vax. And I think that there are a lot of nuances in that. I've interviewed him several times, and we've talked about this. He obviously had concerns about this new COVID vaccine and the way that it was formulated. And so I guess my question becomes, how should we look at vaccines on the whole? That was a very unique situation with the pandemic.
Yes.
But just tick off for people. What is your thinking? Should they go ahead and have all the ones that are mandated for little kids? And what do you think?
So because we can now start to talk honestly and openly and have nuanced positions, which is always the case in biology in particular, and certainly in clinical medicine, I can say, on one hand, I think it was a good idea that the vaccine was rushed to market when it was. We were in the middle of an Alpha and Delta crisis when my elderly patients' lives were in danger, and I vaccinated them. And I think that was the right thing to do to this day. Was the mandate appropriate? No, you did not have a bioethical standing for a mandate. Should a 22-year-old be getting boosters now? I don't even know how to answer that, because we don't even know what they're boostering against. The boosters aren't even for the variants that are circulating around. So I'm sorry, Mr. 22-year-old, I can't even begin the process of informed consent for you. And fundamentally, I agree with RFK Jr.'s that vaccines should be subjected to the same standards as every other medication or every other agent that I use. I'm not a surgeon. I don't use a knife. I use pharmacology and things that alter physiology. And in order to use them safely and in order to give informed consent, I must have the kind of scrutiny I'm used to achieving for every medication I use. There should be no exception to that, except under extraordinary circumstances, which there were back in the early days of COVID. But standard care should require that the vaccines be scrutinized just like every other medical product, medical biological agent, and medical instrument. Everything needs to be scrutinized at the same standard.
You know, in my gut throughout this COVID experience, I felt that the vaccine should be a decision. And we hear this phrase used a lot in a whole nother avenue, which I don't want to go down right now, but that it should be between you and your doctor, right? So if your doctor says, well, you're older, you have a serious weight issue, then I definitely want you to be vaccinated. And I also actually want you to get a booster or whatever, rather than, I can't do anything and I can't go anywhere. I couldn't wait to get the vaccine because I wanted to get back to work and I wanted to get back to my life. It was like a bad contract that you had to sign to trade off for returning to work. And I think that we were all relieved that there was a vaccine and there was a way to get back to life. But I guess as we watch all this process, as it's going to play out, there's such high hopes, as I said. What do you think, if you were running HHS, what would you say? These are the first three things, okay? Because we can't change things overnight. These are a few things that we can do that will start to turn things in the right direction.
Well, the thing I worry about is becoming too aggressive and throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Right. For instance, I'm not knowledgeable enough to just be able to reach into the agriculture business and say, you guys got to clean this up. I need these pesticides out of the picture. I need to understand more the cost and benefit analysis as we remove these problem and poisons from our food, and that we begin to require food organizations to be more transparent about what they're doing. I think Martha, they're using the same tactics as the tobacco companies did.
Yes.
And in fact, many of them are the very same companies, the very same people, marketers, scientists, and lobbyists, very same people are using that food to make it addictive. I think that should be laid bare in some way. We've got to educate people about proper nutrition in a much better way than we have in the past. And something that RFK Jr. has already initiated, or at least said he's going to initiate immediately, is a RICO action to open up the corruption amongst FDA, pharmaceutical agents, pharmaceutical organizations, the publications, the medical publications, which clearly are adulterated. The COVID laid that bare completely, and the medical societies, and give them a chance to straighten things out, but make it clear to them if they do not, there will be serious actions.
I think I would love to see exactly what you're talking about, because I remember those tobacco companies, spokespeople and CEOs standing up in front of Congress. Initially, in the old videos, they're saying there's no connection between cancer and smoking. And then they came back and had to admit that there was a link between cancer and smoking. Then we had the package labels slapped on everything. And then, as you point out, according to research done by a number of people, including Callie and Casey Means, these same people who worked to make tobacco addictive, then bought companies like snack companies like Frito-Lay and the like, and then they turned those scientists over to the snack department and said, okay, we got to sell a lot of Fritos or whatever it was. I'm not sure if it was exactly Fritos, but we got to sell a lot of snacks that people want to finish the bag of, and people say, oh, I opened that bag. I can't just have one. I got to eat the whole thing. So I think that's a very practical way to approach it, to say, let's get these people in before Congress. Let's talk about 5 ingredients or whatever it is that we think should be removed from foods, and make people more aware, because people really decided on their own to stop smoking. I mean, it wasn't the government saying you're not allowed.
It took a long time. It really took a long time, but at least there weren't new people being addicted along the way.
Right.
And you asked for 3 things, by the way. The third thing I would do as HHS is eliminate pharmaceutical sales on television, the ads on television. That's got to stop. And anything that where we as a country are doing things that no one else in the world is doing, or literally almost no one else, I want some explanations as to how they defend those things, whether it's a food additive, a color additive, advertising plan, whatever it might be. Why are we an outlier? And let's warn ourselves. Let's be careful. I work in the addiction field, and I'm very worried about how addictive our foods are, and I worry about other addictive substances. But I am not saying that you shouldn't have pizza or Fritos once in a while, nor that you shouldn't have a glass of wine or whatever your vice might be. What I'm saying is the excesses. We should be free to do what we want to do in this country. I am all about that. But the excesses that are being foisted on us and the effect it's having on us needs to be much more evident to people.
Yeah, I mean, I have been in Europe and looked in a market, and you think, well, the food is all different here. I don't recognize, none of my cereals are here, or if they are here, they look a little bit different. So I think that's something we need to think about. Why do we put dyes in our Fruit Loops or whatever when they choose not to do that?
And by the way, you know what, Martha? It'd be really, I just thought about this. It'd be good to know. I think something that I suspect this might be a nice solution. If there's a question why there's a certain, say, food coloring in the Fruit Loops, you need to explain why you put it there. And if it's to make it more yummy, then you need to make that explicit, because we need to know what you're doing to us. And fine, go put it in. And everybody else, beware. They're putting something in there that may not be good for you, and it's there to addict you and nothing more.
The Untold Story continues right after this.
It's interesting when we talk about the addiction impact of snacks. It also, you think about the addiction impact, very similar to what we've seen happen in social media, which you and I have talked about before as well. I wonder if, just finding ways to make things impossible to avoid, or that you want to keep clicking and you want to keep scrolling, and the ways that they draw us deep into these technologies that are so damaging, especially for our young people.
Yes.
Can the HHS take on anything in that regard that you think could be impactful?
Well, two things. Schools ought to be very circumspect about allowing phones and social media. I would encourage them to have some sort of unified policy preventing it until the age of 16 or 18 or something. And the other thing I heard that Facebook and Instagram is doing that sounds like a really good idea for me is they have a new setting, which is essentially erasing the algorithm. In other words, if your kid has been on Instagram for a period of weeks and they're starting to get downloaded some things that, are sort of suggestive of it's going in a bad direction, you push a button and the algorithm is erased and it's just all neutral again. I think that's an interesting idea. People should be very aware that that's available, and X needs to put that out as well.
Yeah, and I think Instagram has some parental controls, as you said, Facebook.
Yes.
Same company, that parents do need to. This can be daunting. I think, a lot of us, you look at the phone, how do I do that? But we have to make it really easy for people to get this information. You should be able to Google, how can I shut up the algorithm, and get a very easy answer. Because we know those algorithms are attached to a ton of advertising. So it's not like they want to make it easy for you at these companies. They want to make it hard.
I get it. Well, but it is that sinister quality that we want to erase from the system. It's to everybody's benefit. Social media will survive a lot longer if it has a healthier relationship with us. And same thing with food and with pharmaceuticals. The idea is make America healthy. That's all. We want to make things better. Now, again, sometimes you can throw the baby out with the bathwater. I want people to be very cautious about this as they make some of these sweeping changes. But let's look under the hood. Let's look at the adulterating and the corrupting influences, and let's get them out of this, all of it.
So one of the biggest difficulties is training for doctors and physicians, and creating a medical environment where doctors are open to talking to you about your diet, talking to you about the supplements that you're taking, and not just prescribing something and saying, okay, this is going to make you feel better. Let's take this for the next 5 years. So is there anything that can be, we don't want the heavy hand of government changing everything, but we want some positive moves in this direction. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, what people so medicine is a mess right now. The system is a mess, and physicians don't have enough time to get into that with you. They are too busy managing conditions that will shorten your life. This is actually something I'm embarrassed about, that I haven't emphasized the things that can lengthen your life and wellness with my patients. I sort of gave up early because there was no receptivity, and patients don't come to the doctor for that kind of information. By the time they get to us, they're sick. We're busy dealing with sickness, like too busy dealing with sickness and the phenomenon that shorten life. That's all we can handle. So we need some sort of ancillary system to help motivate people to look at health and wellness. I'm not sure it's going to be the medical system. It's definitely not going to be physicians. And on top of that, something that amongst the many things that COVID laid bare, turns out most of my peers are employed. And as an employed individual, they respond to what their bosses tell them to do. And believe me, that's all about efficiency and going through patients and dealing with illnesses and diminishing liabilities and responding to the electronic medical record. There just isn't more time to do other things. But we have to find a way to educate and raise awareness about the importance of resistance training, conscious eating. We're beginning there. We're starting to have those conversations. Again, I don't know that it's government. I hope the private sector can come up with stuff. I'm trying myself to get in there and climb into things where we can get things back in the hands of the patient and away from the medical system.
Yeah. I think people are becoming a lot more aware, but as you say, it's going to take a long time, and we do have to build. Yeah. I was thinking about RFK Jr., and when I was a kid, we had something in school called the Presidential Physical Fitness Award.
Yep.
I don't know if you remember that, but it was a patch, and you could earn your patch, and I wanted that patch so badly because there was, one thing that I think it was like the flex arm hang or something. You had to hang there for like a minute or something, and it kept me from getting the patch a couple times, and I really wanted it. And I thought we should bring that back because it got kids moving and motivated to be rewarded for physical fitness. But now we're just kind of, they're like afraid to say anything to people if they're overweight or they don't want to do stuff.
That's it. That's where we've gone off the rail. And I interviewed a woman yesterday, wrote a book called Toxic Empathy. And we were having this conversation about how empathy is misplaced. People need to be encouraged. People need to be challenged. People need to build resiliency. We now know that what is emotionally healthy for people is not a safe space and protection, but exposure and resilience. Literally, this is the main way we deal with anxiety and OCD and so many different psychiatric disorders. The fact that we're resisting from challenging kids or putting them away where they can't be touched and have to be raised like veal, we're harming them and making them ill, not just physically, as you say. If we're not urging them to meet physical challenges and to get physically fit, emotionally, they're also becoming impaired by being, again, raised without a sense of challenge and resilience. So we need to get back to basics. We know how to do this.
Totally. It just reminds me, as you're saying that, about the day after the election and some of these universities telling kids they didn't have to go to school. And I thought, what kind of president of any organization sends this message? What they should be saying, in my humble opinion, is, you know what? Your team lost last night. I want to see every single one of you in class today. Do not give up a whole day of becoming smarter and stronger and better informed. Don't wallow. Get right back up on that horse. Go to school. Go to work. That's not the message. It's like, we have a Lego room at Georgetown where you can go get your fears and your sadness out.
Yeah, no, that's ridiculous. Hey, look, you certainly convene with other people, communicate, co-regulate together, but go get some physical activity. Go running. Go do some resistance training. Listen to the classical music. Start planning. If you're politically active, fine. Start planning. Be resilient. Start educating yourself. It's so terrible when you think about the direction we've gone.
Oh my gosh.
It's just we have to go completely the other way. Humans have known this for thousands of years. This is not something new.
So one specific thing I want to ask you about before we wrap up is the question of, because there were a number of legalizing pot referendums that were in the election as well. And this is a thing that seemed like a good idea, I guess, to some people at the time. I personally didn't think it sounded like a great idea. I'm not against people who are in medical pain. recreational use, I don't think has gone in a great direction. And the pot that we're seeing now is so much more potent. Then you can also go to a shop and get boosters, THC boosters that you add to your pot. And now there's more states that have recreational use. So as an addiction specialist, what do you say to parents out there and to people out there?
It's what I've said from the beginning, is that there will be consequences. There will be people harmed by this, but the people create the laws. I don't. And so I will manage it, but it's not going to be good. I would urge you to look at the data in states where there is recreational use and look at the data. But the great surprise, the thing I did not anticipate, and I've had several family members profoundly affected by this, which is that the concentration of THC in many of these products is now approaching 100%. And so we are seeing much more addiction to THC. And we are seeing another phenomenon that I really doubted existed, but now there's no doubt in my mind, which is psychotic episodes from the weed itself. Not in somebody with predisposition for psychotic illness, psychotic illness caused by weed. It's overwhelmingly obvious now, and it's become commonplace. And over the age of 65, anticholinergic delirium, as people are ending up in the ER hand over fist here in California, been well reported by the Kaiser Group. And we want to do more of this. That's all I'm saying. I'll deal with it, but just look at the data and decide what you want to do. It's not great.
I mean, when the New York Times is putting this story on the front page, where, they had certainly looked the other way or written favorable pieces about legalization and the positive, mostly around incarceration for low-level drug offenses. I think that has been the approach.
That, by the way, that was the... That makes sense, right?
Understood.
How about we start bringing drug courts back? We start urging people to take care of themselves.
What we got is like a pot shop on every corner. Times Square smells like one big joint, and it's just... and this psychosis, and what you just mentioned, I know a young person who had this severe vomiting issue.
The hyperemesis. Yep, that's super common too. Very common. And especially if you're doing dabs, everybody, you'll start the vomiting for sure. But you check out Alex Berenson's book, Tell Your Children.
Yeah.
He wrote it 15 years ago. It's all in there. He pulled it together. It's all in the science. There it is. And make your decisions accordingly. I'm not going to tell people what to do. That, by the way, Martha, the fact that we have a government that tells people what to do and tells them to shelter in place, that is another level of disgust for me that I walk around disgusted all the time. So I am not here to tell you how to live your life. That is anathema to my job. But educate yourself. Behave accordingly. Yep.
And I think that's the number one thing that this Make America Healthy Again movement can do, is to make sure that these messages about food dyes and additives and ultra processed foods and everything else are getting to people.
Should want to do this.
Yeah.
We should be working with the human condition, which is we should be motivating people. We should want to do this. And listen, there's ways to do that. Let's work on that. Let's not tell people what to do. Let's build their motivation so they do it on their own. They'll feel much better.
You do that so powerfully with all of your work, Dr. Drew Pinsky, and it's always great to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining me on The Untold Story today, and I hope we see each other again soon. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, too.
All right. Dr. Drew Pinsky joining me today on The Untold Story with a broader look at the potential for Make America Healthy Again, how you can approach it for your family, and become more informed about the things that we all need to know about how to improve our health rather than fix it once it's broken. Thanks so much for joining me on The Untold Story. I'm Martha McCallum. I'll see you next time. You've been listening to The Untold Story with Martha McCallum. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Make sure to rate and review. For more podcasts, go to foxnewspodcast.com. Listen ad-free with the Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app.